Angelina Jolie makes allegations of abuse against Brad Pitt in a new court filing. Her claims about a 2016 flight involving Pitt and her children, and why make them public now. Welcome back to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. I'm Angenette Levy. Angelina Jolie is making more allegations of abuse against Brad Pitt, and this came in a case involving the winery that they once owned together, which seems a little bit odd. This involves a 2016 plane flight that we've heard about in the past. Now, Angelina Jolie is saying that during that flight, when they had an argument, Brad Pitt grabbed her by the head and shook and choked her, and also choked one of their children and hit another while these children were trying to defend her. So, joining me to talk about this is entertainment lawyer Jonathan Handel. He is out of Los Angeles. Jonathan, we've talked about this before. Thanks again for coming back to Sidebar. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Good to be back.
So, why is this coming out, in your opinion? The more details about this allegation that we've known about for a long time. Why is this coming out in a lawsuit, a cross complaint about a winery?
Well, it's complex, and the last time we spoke about this, we proved that cheesy puns pair well with wine jokes, but we're probably going to avoid some of those today because some of these allegations are serious. Um, the But to give listeners and viewers the context, um, Brad and Angelina bought a winery in the south of France in 2008, I believe. So fell in love with it, wanted it both as a family home and as a business to ultimately retire to. They were married at the winery a number of years later. The marriage has gone further south than the south of France, and they're the divorce and all of this. And um, Angelina Jolie ultimately sold her half of the winery to indirectly, at least, to the Stoli group, the Stoli alcohol group. And Pitt then sued her, and there actually are lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions, in I think in Brussels and in France and in the U.S. Uh, Basically contending that he was denied his contractual rights, that he should have had the first right to buy her half of the winery, buy her out. Now he has a partner that's a company that he doesn't really want to be partnered with, and how does that fit with the idea of, certainly not with making a family home, but even with making it a business. Um, Jolie, for her part, says that one of her, that she turned a bit sour on the idea of the winery, as she claims, as Brad Pitt uh, developed or evinced alcohol problems that I think she's claiming led to some of the alleged violence. And so the idea of owning an alcohol related business was not her thing anymore. Um, the contention here, as I understand it, as we understand it from the papers, is that negotiations between Pitt and Jolie over selling half the winery to Brad Pitt from Angelina Jolie broke down, and part of the contention here is that the alleged violence on the airplane was a factor in that. Now, the FBI, the FBI, the federal government has jurisdiction, extraterritorial jurisdiction over uh, flights under certain circumstances, and this was one of them. So the FBI actually investigated, and there is reporting that a redacted version of an FBI affidavit included in the cross complaint, or quoted in the cross complaint at least, says that there was grounds to believe that there may have been a crime committed. But Jolie ultimately did not want to cooperate in prosecution, and for that reason, no charges ever were brought. And it should be emphasized, there were no criminal charges brought against Brad Pitt in connection with this alleged incident.
And I thought I had read as well that there were issues there with the investigation, and maybe that is it. That if you have a witness who is an accuser or an alleged victim, if they don't cooperate, the case isn't going to get very far.
This has been an issue to put it in a broader framing for a moment, in domestic violence and alleged domestic violence cases for many, many years. We transitioned from an era where police never cared about domestic violence, and it was just not, very seldom prosecuted, if at all. And women's complaints fell on, primarily women, fell on completely deaf, misogynistic ears, to an era where sometimes prosecutors and police face a very difficult choice, which is that, um, because in many cases a woman is economically dependent on the man, not the case here, but also in love with and yet conflicted over the love, because of the domestic violence going on in a household, and you've got, often have kids together, so there's love for the children, which they both parents may hopefully share, that feeling. Um, you've got a lot of cases where, police are called to a domestic violence incident, and ultimately the woman withdraws her cooperation either under duress and threat from the man, fear that the police, and authorities can't protect her from those threats, which is sometimes, uh, often a justified fear, unfortunately. And women have been even murdered as a result of calling 911. And other times, because they're on the edge. They love the guy, but they hate what he's doing to them. And he comes back and says, "Well, I'm so sorry. It was the alcohol. It was this. It was that, and I'll never do it again." And then you get into a cycle. So it is very, in some cases, DAs will prosecute, nonetheless, because the crime is a social crime. It's crime against society as well as against the individual victim. That's sort of the conceptual difference between criminal prosecutions and civil lawsuits. Criminal prosecution is brought in the name of the state or the people or the federal government, depending. So here, um, you have an airplane, you have kids who allegedly were harmed, as well, but you've got this airplane over the Atlantic, and without the cooperation or the desire to move forward, on the part of, Angelina Jolie at the time, it would have been a very hard case to prosecute.
I just want to know though why it's coming out in the countersuit. I know this is all about why she's trying to say why she opted to sell her part of the winery. Pitt contends he knew nothing about the sale; it was done in secret, and so I just think it's interesting. It's coming out in this case specifically. I mean, I guess you could say this is one of the reasons why I did it.
I think that is one of what she's saying, and it also, um, it's obviously a piece of very, you know, dirty laundry that does not reflect well on Brad Pitt. And these kinds of cases, any kind of a divorce related case can be very high stakes and can be very vituperative. And this is clearly where this is going. This is a scorched earth, piece of litigation.
And I just the cynic in me, Jonathan, tends to think, you can make something public without having it come out of your mouth by putting it in a court filing. And so if you really want to fire a shot to the bow, doing it in a court filing is a way to kind of insulate yourself, I would think, from any type of litigation for defamation, say, or something to that effect. I mean, am I being too cynical there?
Well, what you're saying is certainly factually accurate. Whether you're too cynical or not cynical enough, I suppose, depends on the time of day and on one's, point of view. But what you're what you're addressing, is referred to as the litigation privilege, and litigation filings are privileged against, defamation complaints and other kinds of complaints. You can say things in a litigation filing, that are you will be insulated in a way that you wouldn't be if you just stood up. So if now truth is a defense, and if there is indeed FBI course, the FBI investigation is based on conversations with Jolie and with the children, perhaps. Um, there wasn't, video in the airplane or something like that. So, if Brad Pitt, if she had made these statements outside the litigation context, uh, Pitt could have added a count for defamation if he felt that he wanted to go in that direction. That's not an option, uh, when the allegations are made in the context of litigation papers, and it's why when litigation is announced, you will often see lawyers being very cautious and saying, you know, our filing alleges that person X did such and such and so and so. The filing further alleges that person X did so and so and such and such. And they will be, if not directly quoting from the litigation papers, they'll be very close to that. And a cautious lawyer, won't go beyond that uh, for fear of counterclaims against the lawyer for that matter, or against the plaintiff for defamation. And I've seen and been involved, in fact, in suits of that sort. I mean, uh, years ago, a music star um, brought a lawsuit, and um, a backup singer brought a countersuit for defamation, saying that that the backup singer's voice was part of what was included. There were claims outside. I guess the claims were made outside of the litigation papers. So, bottom line, yes, there is insulation because of the filing.
Well, this is certainly interesting, and we know something happened on that plane. I mean, it's been discussed many times over the years, but the exact details. I don't think we can say yay or nay on that. But obviously, she's filing this. We know the FBI investigated and did not pursue criminal charges. Jonathan Handel, thanks as always for coming on, for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. It is produced by Sam Goldberg, Michael Deininger, and Logan Harris. Bobby Szoke is our YouTube manager. Alyssa Fisher is our booking producer, and Kiara Bronson handles our social media. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and we will see you next time.